Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All those Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Shivari Mataji, whenever you're ready, you can start Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Shri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Nashtaki. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 28, verse 56 to 65. Text 56. In that city, the material body, there are 5 gardens, 9 gates, 1 protector, 3 apartments, 6 families, 5 stores, 5 material elements, and 1 woman who is lord of the house. Text 57. My dear friend, the 5 gardens are the 5 objects of sense enjoyment, and the protector is the life air, which passes through the 9 gates. The 3 apartments are the chief ingredients, fire, water, and earth. The 6 families are the aggregate total of the mind and 5 senses. Text 58. The 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. They are transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements which are eternal. Behind this activity is the soul. The soul is the person and enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of the body, he is devoid of knowledge. Text 59. My dear friend, when... Sorry, Prabhuji, just a second. Text 59. My dear friend, when you enter such a body along with the woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you have forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conception, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Text 60. Actually, you are not the daughter of Vidarbha, nor this man, Malaydhuja, your well-wishing husband, nor were you the actual husband of Puranjani. You were simply captivated in this body of 9 gates. Text 61. Sometimes you think yourself a man, sometimes a chaste woman, and sometimes a neutral eunuch. This is all because of the body, which is created by illusory energy. This illusory energy is my potency, and actually, both of us, you and I, are pure spiritual identities. Now, just try to understand this. I am trying to explain our factual position. Text 62. My dear friend, I, the super soul, and you, the individual soul, are not different in quality, for we are both spiritual. In fact, my dear friend, you are qualitatively not different from me in your constitutional position. Just try to consider this subject. Those who are advanced scholars who are in knowledge do not find any qualitative difference between you and me. Text 63. As a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas other actually sees two bodies. So in our material condition, in which the uh, living being is affected and yet not affected. There is a difference between God and living entity. Text 64. In this way, both swans live together in the herd. When the one swan is instructed by other, he is situated in his constitutional position. This means he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which was lost of his because of his material attraction. Text 65. My dear King Prachin Barhi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, is celebrated to be known indirectly. Thus, I have described this story Puranjana to you. Actually, it is an instruction for self-realization. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Whenever you're ready, Chaitanya Prabhuji, please can start.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you, Shivani Mataji, for reading today. And thank you, Sundran Prabhu, for giving me this opportunity to share something from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, chapter 28. So before we start, I'd like to offer my prayers. Om Kyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachalam Panghum Langayate Girim Yatkripātamaham Vande Shri Gurudin Taranam. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So, for my own purification and for the pleasure of all assembled Vaishnavas, so we'll discuss something from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, chapter 28. So, just to give you a brief background of what's been discussed so far, we are on this chapter. We're discussing a story which is being narrated by Sri Narad Muni to the king Prachini Bharishat. And in order to explain to him some higher spiritual topics, Narad Muni is using an allegorical story of King Purandar. And in that story of King Purandar, we've seen how after living a life of sense gratification, he had to ultimately, leave that body and take up a new body as a woman called Vaidarbhi. And in that particular body, Vaidarbhi was married to a king Malaydhwaja, and how she wonderfully served Malaydhwaja, and who just left his body as well. And that from that analogy, we understood the relationship between a disciple and a spiritual master. Once Vaidarbhi's husband Malaydhwaja leaves his body, she starts lamenting. In that particular instance, a Brahmana, a Vigyata Brahmana, appears at the scene, and now there's a discussion going on between the Brahmana and Vaidarbhi, which in this analogy represents the super soul and the living entity, the Jivatma. So the super soul continues speaking with the Jivatma and states that in that city, the material body, there are 5 gardens, 9 gates, 1 protector, 3 apartments, 6 families, 5 stores, 5 material elements, and 1 woman who is the lord of the house. So the super soul, the Jivatma, is describing that the place where the living entity resides, this material body, is made of multiple different components. The 5 gardens, Prabhupada explains, are the 5 objects of senses, which is sight, smell, taste, sound, and touch. The 9 gates represent the Nodwar, the 9 or different orifices that are there in the body. So the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nostrils, the mouth, and the genitals and the rectum. It is normally said that the living entity who are very pious and who have accumulated a lot of good karmas, when they depart the body, they usually depart the body from the upper gates. But the living entity who are very impious, the soul usually departs from the lower gates and goes to hellish planets. There's 1 protector mentioned, and we've read previously that's described that protector is the life air or the 5-hooded serpent in this analogy. And that is the life air is what the living entity, the Jivatma, floats in, and it protects the Jivatma. The 3 apartments Prabhupada mentions are the 3 prime components of this material energy. That's earth, water, and fire. Bhumir api analo. The 6 families are the 5 senses, and the master of the senses, that is the mind. Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, Manashastani Indriyani, that mind is the chief among the senses. That's the 6 families. The 5 stores are the 5 working organs that are the mouth, the voice, the hands, the legs, the anus, and the genitals. And the 5 material elements are the Panch Mahabhut again, earth, water, fire, air, ether. And one woman who's lord of the house. Here Prabhupada explains that it is described as the intelligence. So the intelligence is the one who's driving the chariot of the body. And the super soul, or the Jivatma, is just a passenger in that scenario. That is also explained. Prabhupada explains that further in text 57 as well. So after describing the situation of the Jivatma, the super soul goes on to say, the 5 stores are the 5 working sensory organs. They transact their business through the combined forces of the 5 elements, which are eternal. Behind all this activity is the soul. So the Jivatma is the passenger in this chariot. The soul is a person and an enjoyer in reality. However, because he is now hidden within the city of body, he is devoid of knowledge. So living entities enters the material creation by the help of the material body. So in order for the Jivatma to come inside this material world, to begin the process of attempting to unsuccessfully enjoy, he has to take upon a material body. And this material body, the composition, we've just seen Prabhupada wonderfully described in the purports. Although the living entity is what's driving this material body, as mentioned in this verse, he remains hidden within the city of the body because he is devoid of knowledge. So because of avidya or ignorance, people do not understand that this body is being driven by a jivatma, by a soul. And they feel that there is a lot of chemical reaction. There's something there that's life and that describes this, but nobody can understand that the soul is what is behind all this. Prabhupada explains in the purport that in order to maintain this body, the 3 prime ingredients that are needed are fire, water, and food grains. And that is how this body wherein the soul resides is maintained. Prakriti, material nature, and Purusha are eternal. So we understand that Prakriti exists in both the manifest and the unmanifest form. So that's why it always remains there. And we know that the soul is eternal and can never be destroyed. So this whole combination, it comes together for a period of time, and the soul gets a particular body based on the different modes of material reaction, material nature. So some people get an animal body, some get a human body, some get a fish body. And that's how in the temporary association between the Jivatma and the material energy happens, but then they separate again, and the material energy goes into the unmanifest form. In text 59, the super soul is saying to the Jivatma, the Brahmana is saying it to Vedarbhi, my dear friend, when you enter such a body, woman of eyes, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you have forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conceptions, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Prabhupada explains in the purport, forgetfulness of spiritual existence is what entangles a man in material existence. Such is a result of sinful life. So the more we neglect Krishna and the more we try to enjoy our senses in this material world, the more and more we come under the spell of ignorance. And why is this important, dear devotees? It is because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mata smriti jnanam apohanam cha. That means that I supply intelligence, memory, as well as forgetfulness. And why is forgetfulness or ignorance important? It is important for the living entity who's attempting to enjoy in this material world to forget that he's in a miserable position to try to enjoy. And for those who are looking for this temporary enjoyment, Krishna awards them that so that they can go through this experience. But whenever they direct their attention away from sense gratification towards Krishna, Krishna gives them remembrance and helps them to understand that they are not this body, but they are the living entity, the Jivatma. Srila Prabhupada, once when he was traveling to the UK, the reporters had asked him once that Srila Prabhupada, that so many preachers have come from the East, and they've come and they've taught this magic and this new thing. What new thing have you come to teach us? And Srila Prabhupada very firmly replied that I have not come here to give you anything new. I have just come here to teach you, remind you what you have forgotten. So this connection that we have with our Supreme Personality of Godhead is not something new, but only something that we have forgotten, which our acharyas help us to remember again through the instructions. King Puranjana, because he was so much engrossed in sense gratification, when he left his body, we saw how it was previously described, he, because of his attachment to sense gratification in women, he had to take on a lower life of a lower body and rebirth again as a woman. One who takes shelter of God is elevated to the highest perfection. However, Srila Prabhupada describes that, again, instead of being engrossed in sense gratification, if we can, for somehow or the other, take shelter of Supreme Personality of Godhead, by His mercy, we will be awarded remembrance again and be able to understand and realize our true self as the spirit soul. A lot of material people say this phrase commonly, that ignorance is bliss, but we realize that in terms of spiritual understanding, that ignorance is actually misery. You may feel that you're undergoing some bliss, temporary happiness. Prabhupada often gave that example of itching. So when you have an itching somewhere in your body and you're scratching yourself, you get this temporary satisfaction, happiness. Oh, my itching is going away. It's I'm being relieved of this misery. But as you continue to itch, you continue to hurt yourself, and you can create more wounds in your body by doing that. So the net process is not bliss. The net process is more misery, is what we understand. In text 60, the super soul goes on to say, actually, you are not the daughter of Vidarbha, nor is this man Malaydwaja your well-wishing husband, nor were you the actual husband of Puranjani. You were simply captivated in this body of 9 gates. So a very important point is described here, and Srila Prabhupada elaborates on it further. And he says this false identification creates various associations. So once the living entity enters this material body and forgets that he is actually the spirit soul and identifies himself with the body, he starts getting entrapped in many, many different associations. So people identify themselves with a particular family, sometimes with a particular caste, sometimes in a particular country. So in this, and if we see the current modern day politics, the recent elections that have happened globally, a lot of the politics has moved towards right-wing nationalism, where people are identifying based on the country of birth, based on their body, and a lot of elections are happening on this basis. And Prabhupada, warned us against this, that these different kind of isms that are there, they will entangle us more and more into this material world. Those people claim that we are the sons of the soil. We are from a particular country. We are sons of the soil, and that is bodily consciousness. Because a transcendentalist, he understands that we are not this body, so we are not sons of the soil, but we are actually all children of God. They built the United Nations with 193 voting nations, but with the 193 voting nations, there are 193 different purposes or plans going on. Instead of having one particular plan, one particular ideology, which would be to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where we could really all be together, truly united, there's separate agendas that happen. And that is that is the dilemma of this material world. So then that happens because of false identification with this body. There are lots of other wonderful examples that devotees have shared. There's one example there where we understand that as a family, how we all come together in a particular lifetime can be understood by the example of a train journey. So when somebody takes a train journey, you meet so many different co-passengers, and you spend maybe your 24-hour train ride with them. You chat with them. You maybe share your food with them, and you share life experiences with them. But then after a period of time, whenever somebody's station or stop comes, the other person steps down and you probably don't see him again in your lifetime. So similarly, the living entities from different journeys in the spiritual, in the material world, they come together for a period of time as a family, and then soon, as and when people's time comes, they leave the body and they move apart. One other example that's mentioned regarding this in the Bhagavatam that I personally like a lot is about the description that's given by Chitraketu Maharaj's son that comes in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So when I think most devotees will be familiar with the story of Chitraketu Maharaj, how, after multiple sacrifices and tribulations, he was awarded a son. But soon, because of the envy of the other queens, the son was killed and he had to leave his body. And then with the help of a saint, the son was brought back on the request of Chitraketu Maharaj. But when he was brought back, the conversation that happened between Chitraketu Maharaj and the son is very wonderful. In that conversation, Chitraketu Maharaj addresses him, the living entity, as his son. But the living entity describes back that, which father are you? Because I've had so many fathers in so many different lifetimes. So please identify yourself who you are, So that immediately that personal connection is lost there. And he gives an example of money or wealth. So whenever we have some money with us, if I have, say, a $20 bill, if it's with me, I feel this is mine. But if I have a business transaction with somebody and I give that money to them in exchange of something else, I cannot go back tomorrow and say, hey, that is my $20 bill. Give it to me, because now that's become somebody else's. So similarly, when the living entity comes together in this body and comes together as a family, temporarily they may come together for a particular purpose. But then once that purpose is over, then the living entity takes another body and then has another relationship with another family. So similarly, this constant exchange is going on. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also explains that it is just like in a river, a lot of pebbles, sands, twigs, sometimes with the influence of the waves, they come together temporarily for some time. Then again, the waves come and they dissipate these different entities. So similarly, different souls, they come together as a family for some time, and then they are spread apart. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had said this in this wonderful bhajan that Srila Prabhupada quotes, Miche Mayara Vashe, Yacha Bhashe, Khacha Habu Dubu, Bhai, Jive Krishna Das, Ei Vishwas, Koraleta Ara Dukhanai. That my dear living entities, you are being carried away by the waves of material nature. So sometimes you're elated in family life and sometimes you're completely dejected. Sometimes you are on the surface, sometimes you are being drowned. Khacha habu dubu bhai. In this way, your eternal life is being spoiled. But if you simply catch hold of Krishna and take shelter of his lotus feet, Jiva Krishna Das, Ei Vishwas, Koraleta Ara Dukhanai, you will once again get free from all the miserable material conditions. So one should take shelter of Krishna and return home back to Godhead. That was the message from this particular purport. Text 61, the super soul continues to describe that sometimes you think you're a man, sometimes a chaste woman, sometimes a eunuch. This is all based on the bodily identification, which is created by the illusory energy. But this illusory energy is my potency. In the shloka, the word is Maya Srishta. Maya hi esha Maya Srishta. This is my potency. This is under my influence. And actually, both of us, you and I, are pure spiritual identities. We are not this material body, but we are pure spirit souls. Now, just try to understand this. I'm trying to explain our factual position. So this conversation is between the super soul and the soul. And the super soul is saying that we are both spiritual. Neither are you material, neither am I taking a material body. Prabhupada writes in the purport that the real residence of both is the spiritual world, which is Sanatan. So the living entity's quality is also Sanatan, and the living entity's residence is also Sanatan. true residence is Sanatan. But somehow we are entered into this material world and material creation. And the fact that our real identification, our real quality, guna, is Satchid Anand, is also very commonly seen, in this material world, because what each living entity hankers for is this happiness which is everlasting. That is why, if you notice, devotees, that whenever we have any story, any fairy tale, or any movie, we always end, and the stories usually go, there's a man and there's a woman and there's a evil character, and the evil character tries to separate them and the evil character dies. And then the story always ends with, and they always lived happily ever after. So this happily ever after that's there in each of our sort of stories and fairy tales comes because this is our inert nature. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for something that's Satchid Anand, because that is who we are. That is our spiritual identity. But whatever we, in this material world, we get entangled with Asat, Achit, and Anand. Temporary, full of misery, and full of ignorance. Do not get, so that is why, we should realize each and every time that we are not beings of this material world. My Guru Maharaj, he says a wonderful phrase, that we are not material beings who are trying to undergo a spiritual journey, but we are actually spiritual beings who have come to this material world to undergo this material journey so that we can transform our desire back from sense gratification to serving Krishna. That is why whenever we have to engage in so many different situations in this material world, with politics, including sometimes family, sometimes society, sometimes office and workplace, sometimes we have different interactions even in the temple. But we should always understand that we are the spirituals, our real identity is spirit soul, and our real business is in connecting with Krishna. Sometimes anything else that's going on in the background, there's no need to pay too much attention to it, because this is not why we are here. We are here so we can transform ourselves and regain our loving consciousness back again to serving Krishna. Prabhupada says that the material world is created for the living entity. So it's for the living entity's experience or transformation. Krishna creates the material world. And one should accept Sanatan Dharma and return back to Godhead. So we should not pay more heed to this temporary material energy, material creation. But unfortunately, the leaders of society, they are not guiding by this principle, but they're guided by the principle of Andayatender Upanyamanaha, that the blind lead the blind. And hence, we see majority sources of education that there in the universities. Prabhupada always used to, say this, that they only teach about material things which are temporary, but there's no university that teaches about the soul, something that is Sanatan, something that is forever going to remain, that is eternal. And that is why we see in a lot of in material science, there are different versions of each textbooks, and they keep changing, updating understanding, because we know that it's not perfect and it's only temporary. However, we see that we're reading this from Srimad Bhagavatam today, which is a text that was written so many thousands of years ago, and this has not needed to be updated or has not need to have a different version. So our focus should be on something Sanatan. In text 62, the Super Soul goes on to describe that we are the same in quality, that dear soul, we are both spiritual. And qualitatively, you're not different from me in your constitutional position. Just try to understand this subject. So here is what our acharyas taught us, the main sort of philosophy in our sampradaya, how we understand the topic, which is actually difficult to understand. It's called achintya. It's difficult to understand. Bheda bhed tattva. So that means that at the same time there is duality, there is bhed, but at the same time there is oneness, that is abhed, and this is the philosophy, the tattva from our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. What that means essentially, devotees, is that the living entity is qualitatively one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are also pure energies of Krishna. We are Satchidanand Swarup, but in terms of quantity, we are vastly, vastly different. Krishna is Laghu and we are Anu. Krishna is big and has a lot, his energy is unlimited compared to our small infinitesimal energy that we have. But qualitatively, we are similar. Prabhupada describes that Mayavadi sometimes state that no, the supreme part of the God comes under the influence of Maya, and then he forgets that he is God, and then again, when he remembers that, he becomes God again. But Prabhupada refutes that point in this purport very strongly and says that there are different places where it is clearly stated that Maya is adheen to Krishna. Just in the previous verse we saw in 61, it was mentioned, the Super Soul says that Maya hi Maya Srishta, which means Maya is under my control. And other places in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Devi hi Esha Guna Mai Mama Maya Duratyaya. In another place he says, Maya Adhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Chara Chara. So Krishna repeatedly says this material energy is under my control. I'm not under the control of material energy. But the living entity, the part and parcel of Krishna, being the marginal potency, comes under the influence of the illusion energy, the material potency. Text 63 is a wonderful purport written by Srila Prabhupada. And I would recommend devotees to go through this if we have time today. Text 63 and text 65. In text 63, Prabhupada gives an analogy of how at the same time there is oneness and at the same time there's difference. Prabhupada explains in the purport that just as the sun that's shining in the sky, if there are multiple pots of water kept on the ground, you may see the reflection and the brilliance of the sun in those spots. So for somebody who's viewing, the sun knows that these spots and these reflections are an expansion of me. But at the same time, an intelligent person who's witnessing will understand that although they're reflections of the sun, they're not same in terms of potency or energy that a sun has. And that is the quantitative difference between the living entity and the super soul. Another word that Prabhupada uses in the purport to describe that the living entity is lipta or baddha. He's bound by the forces of material nature, by the ropes of material nature. But Krishna, the super soul, is alipta. He is free. He's not under the influence of modes of material nature. God has no material body. When Krishna appears in this world, he appears in his original form as Satchidanand Swarup. He doesn't have to take a material covering that we are forced to take when we appear. God is also the knower of all bodies. We understand in Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, we are introduced to the concept of Kshetragya, that I am the Kshetragya of my particular body. My consciousness exists in this body. I can know what's going on in my hands and legs. But I cannot know what's going on in somebody else's body. But the Paramatma, being present in everyone's heart, his consciousness is spread everywhere and he knows each and everyone's heart from the inside. And that is another difference Prabhupada points out between the super soul and the living individual soul. Prabhupada gives another wonderful example of the fire. So just like there is fire, and the fire that's associated light, there is smoke, there's sparks of fire. So a lot of different energies that are emanating from fire. Similarly, from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we see so many different energies. The Brahman energy, the material creation, and one among them is the spark of fire, that is the living entity, the marginal energy. So the living entity is just one part of the energy of Krishna, but Krishna is the supreme whole. Prabhupada quotes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who says that this particular phrase, Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile Hoy Sarvanash. For one who hears this Mayavadi philosophy of supreme oneness with the living entity and the super soul in all situations, that the living entity himself is God, that person commits spiritual suicide. Hoy Sarvanash. Text 64. Again, we're coming towards the conclusion of the story of King Purandar, and the super soul describes that in this way both swans live together in the heart, and when one swan is instructed by the other, he is situated in his constitution position. So till the time we do not focus our attention to our spiritual master, our scriptures, we will be engaged into this in this material world. But the moment we start regularly reading the scriptures, taking shelter of a spiritual master, and gaining instruction from him, we can regain our original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of material attraction. Prabhupada says that understanding spiritual knowledge comes by the grace of God and by the grace of spiritual master. Tadviti pranipatena pranipashrena sevaya. So we should very humbly serve our spiritual master, our Diksha Gurus, our Shiksha Gurus, and we should inquire from them in order to enable the transformation of our heart and achieve full Krishna consciousness. With this, and I understand an example of Sanatana Goswami. I was listening to a recent lecture by Srila Prabhupada, wherein he described that how Srila Sanatana Goswami, he approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with a straw in his mouth and saying that the whole world considers me as so intelligent, but I know for myself that I'm truly a fool, and I really do not know what is right and not. So I please take shelter of you, surrender unto you. Please guide me in the spiritual understanding. And that is the mode in which we should approach our Guru. And the last shloka for the day, the Super Soul concludes, Narad Muni actually now finishes the story. Coming back to King Prachani Bhari, Narad Muni says that this particular story I have described to you is an instruction for self-realization. So he tells that this is an allegorical story to help you understand that. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that actually devotees are not interested in indirect explanation of Krishna. We like to hear direct pastimes of Krishna, direct the different rasas Krishna enjoys, the different leelas, because that is what gives us bliss and happiness. But many times people who are materially engrossed, they are not able to appreciate that. In order to help them to understand, in our Shastras, in many places, there mention of different allegorical stories, like in the Mahabharata, in the Ramayana. When we read, we'll see it in different parts. Some stories are narrated to explain certain points, to drive home certain messages for those people who are less inclined. And that is a format in which Krishna tries to attract the living entity in each and every situation. So with this, we'll end our discussion for today. Please forgive if I have committed any offenses. Thank you for your time. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavind ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.